Welcome to a module overview for observation and assessment. This module is broken into several smaller units to maximize your understanding of various observation techniques. This week we will take some time to look at and practice recording, checklist, and rating scales. Let's take a look. A checklist is an informal method in which the observer denotes the presence or absence of something on an observation sheet. They are used to record the occurrence of specific behaviors in a given context. The key words are specific, behavior, and given context, meaning at least some of the behaviors on the list will likely occur in particular settings and situations. Items may only be checked off if the observer sees the child perform the behavior. A checklist has to be created ahead of time before you begin to observe. However, they are not time-bound. There are two types of checklist reliability. Intra-observer means that the repeated use of the checklist by the same individual will yield the same results. This can be accomplished if the checklist categories have been carefully defined, if the observer knows the definition of each item on the checklist, and is able to recognize the behavior as such. In most cases, I would use the same checklist on multiple children, but the information would relate to what I believe the child has done. Inter-observer is the degree to which two or more observers agree with one another as to what occurred during an observation session. High inter-observer reliability indicates minimal disagreement and relatively few differences in the observer's judgments and inferences. It deals with the stability or consistency of recordings made by more than one observer using the same checklist on the same child. You and I would then use this same checklist, observe this same child or children, and receive similar results. Environmental rating scales are a great example. When we compare the checklist to previous forms of assessment, we will note that they are closed method. When there is only marks on a paper, no raw data is recorded. They are highly selective. If you are going to count something, you first have to specify what that something is. The behaviors must be identified beforehand. When we refer to the degree of inference, we must define in advance the behaviors or events that properly belong in your observational categories. You will then come across some behaviors that do not fit. And then what? There are several advantages when it comes to using a checklist. They are easy to use as they eliminate the need to record any details and can be used in any format. The data can be used almost immediately and can reveal the developmental gains or behavioral changes that have occurred from one time to the next. The disadvantages, on the other hand, includes the lack of raw data. Information is not documented about the details of the behavior or its context. There is great consideration of typical development with no other considerations, such as family, environment, culture, or individual ability. Here you can see a developmental checklist for toddlers. We can note whether a specific perceptual motor development occurs with observations specifically in the fine or gross motor area. These records can be reviewed and updated throughout a school year and are a great way to indicate when skills have been achieved in areas that need more practice. Rating scales are similar to checklists, yet also different. To rate something basically means to assign it a value or quality. What do you rate on a regular basis in your life? How many gold stars do you give a restaurant on Yelp or a product on Amazon? The term scale is more difficult to define. However, it is simply an instrument with which to measure or record the relative degree to which children possess certain skills, abilities, behaviors, or personality characteristics. In the case of rating scales, determinations can be made with respect to such things as the quality of an individual's performance in some areas. For example, you might want to construct a rating scale to measure a child's ability to get along with others. This can be thought of as varying amounts, such as the child is very sociable, moderately sociable, or not at all sociable. The most difficult task would be to distinguish among these three amounts, or degrees of sociability, as you actually observe a child during social interactions. Again, we are met with another closed observation method. Rating scales do not preserve raw data. Instead, it reduces the recorded information into a mark. There are no anecdotal records or comments involved. They are highly selective as behaviors are meant to fit into specific categories, and the behaviors are defined prior to being observed. When we refer to the degree of inference, It does indicate a judgment on behalf of the observer to fit the behavior into its respective category and place a mark on a continuum. Where the observer chooses to place the mark is purely based on the definition. When it comes to rating scales, some advantages include they are simple to use, provide useful information for planning, and compare current behavior to previous behavior. You need to give considerable thought to the various aspects of the behavior you want to rate. The rating categories require even more thought. There is a loss of raw data. You can rate something yes, no sometimes, but it is very basic and rudimentary. Another difficulty is choosing the criteria or standards by which to judge children's competence or skill in a particular function or behavior. It is difficult to make fine distinctions between areas, but you can't be too loose or too tight. After all, what is excellent, very good, or good? Each rater is different. I would like to highlight a few different types of rating scales. Some are more popular than others, but they each serve their own purpose. Keep these in mind when you create your own rating scale. You will be asked to create one perhaps based on an observation of your child. Here is an example of what a rating scale may look like. We are noting prosocial behavior when it comes to interacting with peers. Notice the linear numerical scale of 1 meaning never and 5 meaning always. Circling the number would indicate how often the child is noted as engaging in that type of behavior while being observed. I'm sure you can see how this information may vary from day to day and relies heavily on the observer's interpretation of the day's events. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out in any of the following ways. I hope you have an outstanding day. I look forward to seeing you in Canvas.